Today we have two guests. Our first guest is Malcolm Harkins. He has over 30 years of tech industry experience, most of it focused on security. He is the Chief Security and Trust Officer at Epiphany Systems. Our second guest is Rob Bathurst. He has over 18 years of experience in offensive cybersecurity and R&D. He is the co-founder and CTO of Epiphany Systems. So welcome to the podcast, both of you. You like to tell your clients there's a difference between playing offense and playing defense. What does that mean? And how can our listeners put that sort of mindset to play in their companies?
When we tell people at a high level that we want them to think like the adversary, think offensive, be offensive, we really want you to take a moment and say, okay, I don't want to think about how to defend the organization right now. I want to think, if I was an adversary, where would I go for maximum disruption? Where would I go for maximum value? What would I want to take?
When Rob talked about having that offensive view, it's really about starting from the inside out, not the outside in. What's their objective? What are they going after? What are they going to do with it? Once you start from the inside and then you understand the connection and connectivity of all those things through the enterprise, then you're better able to make a perimeter decision.
In the security industry, we have a bad habit of saying like, well, my responsibility is this, and so this is where I'm going to stop thinking about the problem. What you really need to take into account is the interconnected nature of the system. How does the identity or the device relate to another identity or another device? If you come together as a team and discuss how bad it could be and what the attacker's objective might be, you get a much better overall defensive understanding that way than you would typically.
It sounds like you're talking about developing a path to resiliency, or walking down the path of resiliency once you've been hit. And I'm wondering, is that something that you can set up even some sort of a template for proactively? Or is it always reactive because it depends on how you're hit or how you've been infiltrated?
There are only fundamentally certain things computers can do within certain systems because of the way fundamentally they are designed. A processor will only process in a certain way, even when it's glitched, even when there's a problem, even when there's an issue, it's still just a variation of its normal processing function, even if you didn't want it to do that. And if you think about it in things like Microsoft Active Directory for authentication and identity, or cloud systems, it's still fundamentally the same. You can, if you understand the sets of relationships and the way these systems can be exploited and the way they can be leveraged, you can build a strategy, as Malcolm pointed out, to reduce the exploitable paths. And for the ones you can't reduce, create resilience, create friction, as we typically call it, so that you're aware the adversary is trying something, or that you're able to block it, or you're able to detect it. Because you can't remove everything, but there are ways to improve that resiliency.
Translating between a new vulnerability and whether or not it's exploitable seems like, how do you do that?
You could have an exploit happen, again, at a laptop or a pinpoint device, but that doesn't mean that your organization is exploitable to a material event. And so you have to systemically and systematically understand those things. If you don't have the scale, you don't have the bodies, because that's also a massive, monumental task of people and process to do. You have to use automation to give you that routine systemic understanding so that you know where you should be taking action to constantly reduce the exploitability of your organization to a material event.
We have to look not just at the exploitability of a single technical condition, but the exploitability of the totality of those relationships. How do I, as an adversary, exploit the way you're architected, the way you're configured, the way your defenses are deployed? And these things are far beyond the attack surface and much more systemic usually within an organization. Things that they just, well, that's the way we've always done it type of approach, which is what usually leads to those compromises.
We were talking about smart buildings at the beginning of the conversation, and it's like you can't be sure you're going to prevent any fire ever in your building, no matter what you do. So then, do you have smoke detectors? Do you have sprinkler system? Do you have fire doors? Do you have lights that illuminate the emergency exits? Like, do you have alarm systems? Do you have automatic way to call the fire department? And then that'll help you get back up and running faster too, and kind of isolate the problem, as opposed to just, oh my God, if we didn't stop the fire to begin with, then the whole building's going down.
If we look at the security industry right now, we basically hire former arsonists to come try and burn our building down and then tell us whether or not they were able to light it on fire. In reality, you're right. When you build the building, you have a building inspector, you have a fire marshal, you have people come around and check it and evaluate it and make sure it's up to code. And we don't have that kind of same rigidity in the security space. Instead, we should be having a fire inspector constantly sitting there going, you shouldn't put those rags over that because in case you didn't know, there's a heater right underneath here.
And to make it even a little bit more complex, in some cases we do have the building inspectors, but they don't understand there's a chemical composition of two bottles that are next to each other on a shelf, and that if somebody trips and bangs them and one breaks, all of a sudden you're going to have a combustible event. Because they didn't understand the relationship between those two chemicals and how an accident could create an explosion or an environmental hazard.
To hear the rest of the interview, tune in wherever you get your podcasts to Cybersecurity Inside.